Hey everyone, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today I'm going to talk about the Roccat Kone XP Air, the latest mouse from Roccat, and it comes in at an eye-watering $170. So by the end of this review, my goal is to help you decide if it's the right one or not for you. If you do decide it's the right one, I'll have a generic affiliate link below. It's for Amazon. It does support the channel, but I'm never one to push that. By all means, purchase it wherever you want. Now, this was sent to me for review, so I do want to give a big thanks to Roccat for doing that. I've had a great working relationship with them over the years. If you've watched this channel before, you know that that does not influence my review of any way. I've had stuff given to me for free that I was critical of, and stuff that I purchased that I was also critical of, but also really enjoyed. So it won't affect the review. So I'll have a couple chapters in the description below that should help, but I'm going to start with the basics. So it's $170. It is available in this black that you see here, but it's also available in white. If you buy the white model, your charge dock and transmitter and cord are also white, which I really like. Now, Roccat rates this mouse at 99 grams, which is actually surprisingly lighter than the Kone XP, the hardwired version. Usually it's the other way around, and your wireless versions weigh more because you have to factor in the battery. They did modify the design slightly because this is battery operated. I don't think they went as crazy with the lighting profile. The Kone XP has a lot more lights that go all the way to the top, and they're a little bit brighter. So because it doesn't have that extra light guide, my guess is that's where the weight savings is coming from. Little lithium batteries for things like this are not that heavy, so it's not like it's adding drastic weight anyway. So for what you get in the box, you get a base, which this is the best part about this mouse. I love this base, and just to give you an example of why I love it, here's the Roccat Leader, the old wireless mouse from Roccat that had a charging dock. And my issue with this, it wasn't so much the mouse. I actually love the size of this mouse. I love large mice. Look how big the dock is when the mouse isn't being charged, and then you look at the size of that. Now, they both work very easily. I can dock these pretty much, without looking at it or trying to fiddle with anything. The issue I had with the Leader, though, is when I was not using it, the dock didn't fit under my monitors for how I have my desk set up. It just didn't look right, so I had to move it to the right of my desk. I used the Leader for a long time. Now, I love this because it has a super clean aesthetic. And what's really nice about this design, so you have a 6-foot or 1.8 meter USB A to C cable, so A on the side that goes to your computer, and then this little C cable can also work on your mouse directly, and it charges your mouse while you use it, and you can see how easy that was. It's braided. It's not as soft and flexible as the hardwired Kone XP. These are a little bit stiffer and heavier, but it's still certainly passable as a wired mouse. The reason why I like this is a 10-minute charge actually gives you 5 hours of actual game time and play time. So if you forgot to charge it and it's completely dead, just throw it on either the dock, which also fast charges it, or hardwired if you just want to play. But after 5-10 minutes of charging, you should be able to get through a nice night of playing. Another thing I like is you get a lot of versatility with the Kone XP Air. If you don't want to travel with any of this stuff, just juice it up, and now you're good for literally up to 100 hours of battery life. The battery life is pretty ridiculous on this. So the transmitter can slide in, as you see here. There's a little slot on the bottom. Now this, just like the Burst Pro Air and the Kone Air, is the wireless switch actually has a Bluetooth mode, or sorry, Kone Pro Air. So if you're in Bluetooth, you don't need the dongle at all. It will go in pairing mode, this little pairing button right here on the bottom. And that can connect to a laptop with Bluetooth, for example. So that was really nice for me. I actually use the Kone Pro Air a lot. That's because my laptop is white and the Kone Pro Air I have is white. That's my pairing for when I travel. And I love the Bluetooth because when I'm using my laptop, I'm using it primarily for video editing. And I love that I don't have to tie up a USB port on my laptop. It's just cleaner and it's easier to deal with. So I'm glad to say that you can still do that with the Kone XP Air, even though it's obviously a more robust, feature-rich mouse. So when you want to use it wirelessly at your house, you can plug it in directly to the front of the charge station, which is super slick. And then I plug in this back, and the charge station has RGB too. The LEDs are actually in a quadrant system, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously not in that order, but you can customize that, and you can customize the lighting zones here. Now, this has easily one of the best. So that's a subjective statement, okay? I'm not saying that this is the best lighting setup because everyone's going to have their opinion. I love that it's so unique. I think it's nice that it's kind of like almost like a tinted plastic, and you can see inside. And the waveguides make the lighting very gentle. It photographs well naturally. It looks good in the pictures, but I also think as far as what you see in real life, I like it as well. Now, there's a lot of buttons on here. Roccat says this is a 29 button mouse. Or 29 buttons that you can assign. This is really a 15 button mouse, but it uses something called Easy Shift. Now, with Roccat Swarm software, you can reassign Easy Shift to any button or buttons you want, meaning you can have 2 buttons for Easy Shift. The reason why I say that, one, I just want to point out, the button on the bottom is my favorite thing about this mouse. It is so natural and intuitive. I don't accidentally push that button. It has just the right amount of resistance, and because this like sloped side here, if you can get that angle, I mean, that's pretty aggressive curve. It just feels so good in my hand, and under 100 grams is awesome. But when I push down on my thumb, I activate Easy Shift. When you activate Easy Shift, the mouse changes color. See how it has that royal blue when it's on? So what Easy Shift is doing is every single button I can assign to have a second function to it. So whether you're doing media keys for changing tracks, additional assignments if you're really good at a mouse and keyboard and you want a lot of controls on your mouse for a game that you're playing. But there's just a lot of commands you can do with it and customize it to make it perform the way you want. Now, the one downside to the default setup is when you use Easy Shift, if I'm pushing my thumb down, as you can see here, I can't get my thumb to reach up here, maybe the bottom 2, and it's really hard at that. I can really only get one button comfortably. So even though it's a 29 button mouse, using only a single Easy Shift key makes it a little cumbersome to get to every single button. So I tend to provide or assign 2 Easy Shift buttons, and when you do that, and you can use the DPI switch button because this still frees up your thumb. I don't suggest using the profile button here, but basically one of these can cycle through your DPIs by itself because you just keep going up or down to go through all your DPI modes. And then the other being Easy Shift, so I can still use all the buttons on my thumb. I typically don't use Easy Shift too much because I'm more than happy with the buttons at my disposal. I think the design is really nice. In fact, I disabled my Easy Shift and I focused on just maximizing the buttons that I have. And that made it easier for me for what I do, which is primarily video production. So I can assign a lot of keys from Adobe Premiere on one profile. Then when I switch over to Photoshop to do my thumbnails and whatever, I can tap this button and you will see that the mouse changes color to different profiles. Every profile can have its own set of DPI settings from 50 all the way up to 19,000 thanks to that owl eye sensor. But they also have their own button assignments. So I have my primary for game control, typically Warzone. I used to play, I'm not great on a mouse and keyboard anymore. For you oldies out there, I used to play a lot of Unreal and Quake back in the day, Unreal Tournament and Quake. And I was a frag master. I loved playing those old games. I was great on mouse and keyboard. I would have killed to have something like this back then. So nowadays, it helps me on gaming, not because I'm saying the owl eye sensor is the ultimate for FPS. When Pixar came out with wireless mice, with mouse sensor upgrades back in the day, this is the PWM or PMW 3360. It was just such a good sensor, and a lot of gaming mice used it and still use Pixar sensors. This owl eye sensor is a modified version, and they're all so good nowadays that really it comes down to your software ergonomics button layout more than the sensor nowadays. So the sensor's not what makes me better. What made me better is because I'm not as fast as I used to be on a keyboard for FPS and competitive gaming. So when I'm using my left hand, I like having it for the WASD for movement, then shift, space bar, the basic controls for movement, sliding, jumping, whatever I need to do. And then I can have a lot of my popular button assignments that I need for a game like Call of Duty Warzone, for example. So I'm pinging enemies, I'm putting plates on, I'm looting, and a lot of that being all at your thumb is just, to me, a game changer, because now I don't have to shift all the way around my keyboard as fast and doing this, hyperactive button movement. I'm just not that good anymore. So this helps me be more competitive in that. And then, of course, if you're playing certain games where we can manually assign weapons or different commands, if you're playing an RPG or MMORPG, whatever, having all that functionality is great. Now, the mouse also has buttons too. You can click left and click right, scroll it up and down and press it in. So there's a lot of good buttons here. Honestly, the design is awesome. I just don't want you to think that you get a full 29 button easy access. It's a little difficult. I've seen mice just slap so many buttons on it, and it's more difficult to use because it's really hard to tell which button's which. If I had to describe my experience with the Kone XP Air and getting to that level of use, it's kind of like when I first switched to my Xbox Elite controller, the Elite 2, I had to get used to the paddles. And it's just because of muscle memory. My hands work a certain way. And with competitive gaming, when I was trying to use FPS, it takes a while to get used to all these buttons. However, after a week or two of playing, you start getting better and better. And now you're like, I can't play without it. I'm so much better on my Elite controller than anything else because those paddles are magic once you get used to it. So I love that it has that. And honestly, I prefer having cord-free when I can because I like having a clean desk. So I understand this mouse isn't for everybody. It's obviously not inexpensive, but it does still offer a lot of stuff, and I think a lot of still people think it's worth it to them. So I wanted to do something different with this review and show you, I guess, shapes, differences in layout, or the sounds they make. To me, that's a big thing. You can see the Roccat Leader. This is an older mouse. The battery life is fairly poor because they weren't that great on batteries back then, and it has some weight to it. You don't get the heat-treated Virgin PTFE glides or anything, so it has a little bit more friction. I like that it has buttons on the right side of the mouse click, on the right mouse click, because that whole thing with easy shift and being able to do extra button assignments, it just doesn't rely on your hand as much. So it was a nice mouse at the time. This is kind of, it's funny, when you look at the easy shift button down here, if you can catch that on the camera, it looks like you can. They improved that immensely when you compare it to the shape of the Kone XP and Kone XP Air. So I love having that longer button. So it's a heavier mouse to me right now. If you're looking for something like this, obviously if you need a deal on it, I'd still recommend the XP Air. So then you have the burst. I brought the burst out only because this is such an inexpensive mouse. It's like 30 or 40 bucks now. I just love the way the burst felt because it's such a simple design. It's more of an ambidextrous design. And for FPS, the burst and the regular Kone mice are better because they're focused on just FPS and it's just two buttons. These still work incredibly well for FPS. You just have a lot more button assignments, so that may be good or bad for you. They obviously cost more. Then you get the Burst Pro Air. It has the same exact functionality as the Kone Pro Air and the XP Air as far as the ability to run with USB or Bluetooth mode. I really like the lighting of the Burst. I think it's more the honeycomb design. And then on the Kone Pro Air, you get just the illumination on the top. So it's a little bit different. The Burst is well lit up, but I feel like the Kone, overall, to me, I like a bigger shape. I like a larger ergonomic shape that's focused on my right hand. And this is the one I use as my daily driver for my laptop. Then, of course, you have the stunning lighting of the Kone XP. It's just so ridiculous the way that looks. It has, I don't want to say it's like a holographic presentation, but you get so much more depth to lighting because of these light guides inside, and you can just customize the daylight side of it. There's so many lights inside. Still incredibly comfortable. I really love the Kone XP lineup in general. And then obviously you get to the one we're reviewing today, which is the Air. It's the Kone XP's wireless brother, and it has less lights and it's darker. So I want to do a sound test real quick. I'll just go through. Hopefully I don't mess up my computer too much. Let's see. Make sure that if I'm clicking something, I'm not going to mess it up. Some of these are actually connected right now. So when you come to the Roccat, I'll do the scroll wheel and then left, right click and a few buttons. A little bit louder mouse. It's an older mouse. I think the clicks are stronger. And as far as the actuation goes, stiffer actuation. It's a harder to press, but it also has a faster rebound. So I'm going to go to the burst. That's the burst. I really like the burst, and I found that some of these have a different level of resistance because the plastic thickness does impact that, but that's the way the burst sounds like. Let's go to the Burst Pro Air. Then we'll do the Kone Pro Air. I'm going to do the Kone XP. Now the Kone XP Air, and I wanted to show you this last for a reason. So I noticed the scroll wheel is different on the Kone XP Air compared to the Kone XP. So we're going to do a scroll wheel comparison. Let's start with the XP. Normal sound. Let's do it up here. And then I'm going to do the Kone XP Air. Has a louder click sound. Now, the Kone Pro, the Burst Pro, and the Burst all have a similar sound to the Kone XP. The Roccat Leader is a little bit closer, but I feel like the Kone XP Air is unique. It might just be my model, or maybe they made some changes to it. They still have the 4D click capability of the XP, so it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just what they did with the new wheel for feedback's sake. I usually wear headphones naturally based off my channel, if you haven't figured that out, and I will never notice that, but I did want to show you the sound difference if it's important to you or not. Now I do want to mention something on the dongles real quick. They look very similar, and when you have a lot of Roccat products, it can get confusing. You can notice here the finish is slightly different on these two dongles, and one of them has a little ridge on it, so it makes it a little bit easier to understand the difference. I did notice that they do actually label the dongles inside. It's a really tiny writing, but if you do have multiple Roccat products and you tend to mix things up or switch things out, right at the bottom of the chrome, if you can look here, I'm not sure how well I'm going to get this into focus, but we'll hope for the best. So you can see that writing on it right at the base is actually where it tells you which mouse or wireless product it belongs to. So just in case you have multiples and you're like me, like what I just did, I'm like, oh crap, I have no idea which one went to which. Just look at the label on the top of the adapter and you'll get to quickly find out what it's assigned to. So this was kind of a different review format this time. I like to get technical typically. I like going down deep rabbit holes. I do usually really in-depth teardowns, especially on things like headsets. With mice, I don't want to say I'm not the most qualified reviewer. I want to be humble and honest. I'm not a competitive FPS player. I don't have 50 mice to test. I have some mice from SteelSeries. I have some mice from Corsair. I have a lot of mice from Roccat. So I base my experiences off of what I have used firsthand, features, and then research the market, things like that. I love the Kone line because of how it feels. And for full disclosure, the Myonix Neos mice, if I'm saying it right, were the only mice that just I felt like was the perfect fit for my hand. But I went through several of those, and those things are like 80 bucks a pop, and they always failed on me after a while. I did notice, as a side note, if you're a drag clicker, I figured like the Kone XP, I'm not as great at it, but the Kone XP has a little bit more stick. If you want to do drag clicking, you can modify any mouse to really support drag clicking if you mess with the finish, but that's another discussion. So anyway, for what I do, I have more value in mice with side buttons because I have a mix of needing the assistance for FPS and also wanting the button enhancement for production. I actually have a Stream Deck XL, those huge multi-button boxes with assignable keys on it, and that's what I've typically used for all my production. Sometimes I just don't even bother using the shortcuts because I have to take my hands off the keyboard and mouse, to change my settings. So having my most frequently used ones on the mouse to me has a huge value. And I like the way this one does it because it's tactile enough where I actually know where everything is. And once you get used to it, again, with 2 easy shift keys, to me it's money. So I've used the Kone XP a lot for my main desktop. I switch setups often, but the Kone XP has been my favorite. And I think I'm going to transition to the XP Air for my desktop and keep the Kone XP for travel just because I like the aesthetic of everything matching. But the battery life being 100 hours on a wireless mouse, it now gets rid of that worry of, am I going to make it through the night if I forgot to charge it the night before? And if you do, just use the rapid charge, and it's great. And I do like, this is kind of a weird thing. So when you unplug this, I like, because I can sit this right on my desk in front of my keyboard and it's tiny, it's accessible to charge the mouse. It's not like some of the others, like I like the Burst Pro. I'm going to dig it up real quick. So the Burst Pro I like, but it's because of the way the transmitter system works. Your transmitter is going directly into the computer, and the cord it comes with is great, but when you don't need to charge it, where do you put it? So I like that this is almost acting like a cord anchor or a holder, and if I really am in a pinch, I can just plug it directly into it. So look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think 170 is steep for any mouse, but there's a lot of merit to what you get. I haven't had a Roccat mouse fail me before, and I have a lot of them, and I use them heavily. My son uses them now. And with these optical switches, because they use light in the switch, they're rated for 100 million clicks. You're not going to have a failure where you get that odd double click thing. You click once and it doubles or triple clicks and you're messing up all your stuff. So it's super reliable. I like the weight. The PTFE glides are just so smooth, and when you put it on a speed mat, it's just awesome. So whether it's worth $170 or not is up to you. Whether you need these features or wireless or not is up to you. Because keep in mind, if you don't need all those that price point, you don't need it to be wireless. The Kone XP is just as good, if not some people may prefer it more because of the lighting, but this is $90. So it's almost half the price to go to the wired version. Yeah, so that's what it is. I hope you guys and girls found this review helpful. If you did, great. If not, shoot me a comment below. I'd love to see what I can do to improve this type of coverage in the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I am still trying to grow the channel. Anyway, with that being said, thank you so much for the support, and I will see you soon.